fact, 2 Seattle police officers will not face charges in the shooting death of Shay Taylor. King County prosecutor Dan Satterberg says the officers' actions were justified. And Satterberg says during the February 2016 encounter in the Wedgwood neighborhood, Taylor reached for a gun and did not comply with orders. But Shay's family denies those claims and says officers escalated the situation. They are now hoping for changes to state law that would make it easier to prosecute the police. The man you saw there, Shay Taylor's brother Andre, is joining our Brandy Cruz live in studio this morning with his reaction to the decision.
Yeah, and Andre Taylor, we appreciate you being here. Not the first time you've joined us to talk about this. I know yesterday was an emotional day for your family,
yes.
An emotional day for you as well. For our viewers who haven't seen it, I want to play part of the announcement from King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg and also your reaction to it yesterday.
Their use of deadly force at that moment was authorized by law. This is not, as a legal question, a close case. The officers were confronted with an armed suspect.
He's sending a message out to our community that even if you comply, you die, and there's nothing nobody's going to do for you. I'm insulted that he would say it. That wasn't even close.
So you saying they are insulted by his characterization that for his office this was an easy decision,
yes,
not to charge these 2 police officers. You guys obviously have 2 different perspectives of what happened that day on that street in Seattle. Just explain to me what was going through your mind when you were responding yesterday to that claim by the prosecutor's office.
What makes what Dan Satterberg problematic is what was said from the beginning of this case by law enforcement. And what was said in the beginning was that the reason why my brother is not here today is because he didn't comply. So when we had an inquest process, the jury unanimously agreed that he did comply. So for Dan to say that in light of that information from the jurors would mean that he's overlooking what the jurors said, that he's bringing no credence to what the jury had said. And that's problematic. It's problematic for this situation with my brother. That's problematic for every other situation that has the potential of happening in the future. So I had to make a response to that because it puts us, everyone, in danger if that's his idea of what he believes justice is, or not even close.
But at the end of the day, you know, the prosecutor had said, and I want to get on to sort of the bigger picture, but I do want to stress on this, you know, they did find a gun in the car, and you're not denying that they found a gun in the vehicle.
What they didn't find was my brother's prints on that gun. What they didn't find is any DNA on that gun that belonged to my brother. And what they did find is that gun was traced back to a sheriff deputy.
So are you still of the belief, or are you suggesting that police planted that gun in that car?
Well, we don't know what happened, but what we do know is that at the time that the incident happened, when CSI came out, there was never no pictures of a gun. The gun appeared the next day, not the day that everything else, the shells in the ground, was accounted for. There was never an accounting for the gun until the next day. That's problematic.
Okay, I want to move on to the bigger picture here because I do think we're going to, you know, we could talk about this back and forth, and you guys are never going to agree, these 2 sides. There is concern from your family, and this has been sort of a growing movement. Washington State does have one of the most difficult written laws in order for prosecutors to be able to charge police when they use deadly force. They have to specifically prove that an officer acted, as you know, with malice and with a lack of good faith. And there are some people who want that wording taken out. How do you feel about that?
I don't think it has one of the worst laws. Washington State has the worst law. According to Amnesty International, we have the most restrictive law in the nation. So there's no question about that. And there are law enforcement like Sue Rohr that agrees with the community that certain parts of that need to be changed. Now, she might not go as far as me to believe that malice and good faith intent needs to be taken out, but she believes that malice needs to be taken out. That is an indication that they know that this law is problematic. So I think that there are law enforcement that understand the dangers of this law. There's politicians that understand the dangers of this law. And for them to understand that danger, yet allow it to still be on the books is problematic.
Do you think that'll get done? I know there's been an effort. I know it's been increasing. Do you think that Olympia and the politicians down there would actually move to change that? Do you see that happening?
I think that the politicians down there are concerned about the well-being of the people. I believe that they would want to do that for the sake of communities. If they see a problem in our law, I think they should act.
I had you on set. You and I talked after the assassination of police officers in Dallas,
Yes.
something you thought obviously was horrible, along with the rest of us. You know, and we talked about the difficult job that these police officers have. You know, they are called to incredibly dangerous situations. They're asked to put their lives on the line every day. And there are some people in the police community who say, you know, if you make it easier to prosecute us, you make it more difficult for us to do our jobs and for us to make these literally split-second decisions. They happen in a fraction of a second. What do you say to people who are concerned that if those changes are made to our state law, it'll make it more difficult for police officers to keep people safe?
Well, I'd say that Washington State only has that language in the law. Other states that don't have that language in the law, it's virtually impossible to prosecute an officer in those situations. What's different about other states is that at least they can bring the possibility of a charge. In our state, we can't even bring that possibility because there are two things that prevent that: malice and good faith intent. We can't even get to the process where we see was something done here inappropriate. So other states that don't have that language, still it's unlikely that an officer will be charged.
Certainly, I know some of those protections are in place for a reason, for some of the reasons I said, but you are right in saying that Washington State certainly has a different statute. Andre Taylor, we appreciate your time, and we know despite, you know, your brother made some mistakes in the past perhaps, but you guys lost a family member, and we understand it's a difficult time for you, so we appreciate your insight on this.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah.
Brandy.
We'll be back after this.